This video is sponsored by Raycon.
I need you to trust me. One last time.
All the years that I had been doing stunts and making movies, it took all of that knowledge to be able to accomplish not just what I did, I think what we all did. I don't know what it is, it's subconscious. I don't want to kill myself, I want to fly.
Let's all have a great summer!
To get started on the development of Mission Impossible 8, we have to go back again to January 14th, 2019, where Tom Cruise announced not only the 7th Mission Impossible film in Dead Reckoning, but also announced that they would be filming Mission Impossible, then Dead Reckoning Part 2, right after, filming them back-to-back so they could release one on July 23rd, 2021, and the 8th installment on August 5th, 2022. But it turns out a film series that tells stories of pulling off impossible missions couldn't overcome their own real Mission Impossible.
China has identified the cause of the mysterious new virus, coronavirus.
On Hollywood Boulevard tonight, an eerie silence. Like most of Hollywood, it's gone dark thanks to the coronavirus. And even when production resumes, there are major challenges on the horizon.
By February 2021, Paramount would confirm that they were no longer planning on filming these back-to-back. Not a surprise considering how difficult, expensive, and complex Dead Reckoning turned out to be, which would have an almost 2-year delay until it was released in July 2023. But the added years of production and the expenses of COVID ballooned Dead Reckoning's budget, meaning that even after grossing a reported $571 million worldwide, the studio would lose around $100 million on the project. And Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning has reportedly also had its own ballooning budget issue, reaching near $400 million according to some reports, over $100 million more than Dead Reckoning cost to make, meaning they really had their work cut out for them when they began production. And a sentiment quietly spoken around the industry really paints a picture of a studio with no control over these films, with various anonymous sources saying that studios can only hope to try and influence McQuarrie and Cruise, highlighting how much Cruise gives to these films, no matter the budget or studio pressure. But there was a bigger storm brewing at Paramount than just the budget. In between the making of Mission Impossible 7 and 8 in 2021, Cruise would get into a heated legal battle with Paramount over them wanting to have a 45-day theatrical release window before they would release the film to digital. Since Cruise makes a lot of his earnings off ticket sales when people go to the theaters to see the movie, killing the theatrical window would eat into his compensation and, according to Cruise and his lawyer, was totally against his contract with Paramount. Cruise and Jim Giannopoulos, the CEO of Paramount Pictures at the time, finally agreed to put a pin in the argument and focus back up on finishing the 2 films. But with production costs and delays mounting and other internal issues at Paramount in the wake of the pandemic and the ever-shifting media landscape, rumors swirled that Paramount was looking to move on from Giannopoulos, and the head of Nickelodeon, Brian Robbins, would take his place. And when Paramount finally pulled the trigger on that rumor, Giannopoulos was in a negotiation with both McQuarrie and Cruise over McQuarrie's last-second decision to add a submarine to the opening sequence of Mission Impossible 7, something that was obviously going to increase the budget. But this meant Giannopoulos was out as the head of Paramount Pictures, and he would be replaced, of course, by Brian Robbins. This news quickly had an impact on the rest of the industry, as this move and some internal rumors seemed to indicate that Paramount was drastically shrinking their film production to focus more on streaming. This all put a big question mark on the future of Paramount, and it's a question that still lingers. Robbins, for his part, would try to get a hold of the situation, attempting to get Cruise to finish filming Mission Impossible 7 before moving on to The Final Reckoning, and also asking for a script of Mission Impossible 8, which, for those of you who have watched this entire series, you should know at this point. Who knows how detailed or even how much of a script at the time ended up in the final film. And per usual, there were multiple reports that McQuarrie had changed the ending and various aspects of the script during different phases of production. Despite all of this uncertainty at the future of Paramount, Cruise just continued to cement himself as one of their biggest assets the next summer in 2022, with his follow-up to Top Gun, Top Gun Maverick setting the box office on fire.
Good morning, aviators.
This morning, Top Gun Maverick is flying high above expectations. Tom Cruise's eagerly anticipated aviator flick is now projected to rake in more than $151 million over the long Memorial Day weekend. The Top Gun sequel gives Cruise his highest-earning opening weekend ever, besting $64 million for War of the Worlds and $61 million for Mission Impossible Fallout.
While the future of Paramount as a major player in motion pictures was up in the air, whether or not Tom Cruise would finish out his run as Ethan Hunt, using every asset available to them, was not. And it's at this point where we get into a very complicated start of production for the film.
Connecting to Operative 207 undercover as oil baron Salvo Korlovsky.
Operative 207 here. The mission's almost complete. The package has been delivered.
Great work, Operative 207. Now quickly put these noise-canceling earbuds from our sponsor Raycon in before we initiate the final sequence.
Oh wow, I can't hear anything.
That's the noise cancellation at work. Not only that, but they have 32-hour battery life, are weatherproof, and are super ergonomic so that they fit in your ears comfortably for extended use. Perfect for an agent on the go.
Also, Father's Day is coming up, and I haven't had a chance to get gifts since I'm undercover. I've worn these on some really long plane rides going out to a mission. And I have to say, they're really comfortable. Even when writing scripts for my other undercover persona, Frame Voyager, they're great to listen to while I'm doing that. And I'm seeing here in the readout that they're only half the price of other premium brands. That's crazy.
Initiating final sequence to the package. Now that the mission is complete, go check out iraycon.com/Voyager to get 15% off site-wide. Brought to you by Raycon.
I made it out. Is there anything left on this mission?
Your mission is complete as Salvo Korlovsky. You can now remove the mask.
As we alluded to before, production on Mission Impossible 8 kind of ended up just being the back-to-back filming Paramount said that they were not going to be doing at the beginning. Though they seem to be filming a bunch of scenes for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, around the same time as the first reported stunts were being filmed for The Final Reckoning.
It was trending after a PSA was made public yesterday. Y'all watch this.
Respectfully, the extra noise. As you can see, we are filming the latest installment of Mission Impossible, and right now we're over gorgeous Spider Canyon in stunning South Africa.
While this video was released for some Top Gun Maverick showings in 2022, there are videos from September 2021 showing crews heading up in these planes to go film, which means they wrapped up filming the train stunt sequence for Dead Reckoning in August 2021 and headed off to start prepping for this biplane sequence by September, one that we will get into a lot more detail later on in this production section. Much like many of the films in this franchise, production would take place across the globe with locations like Malta, South Africa, Norway, Italy, Svalbard, and many other locations. And by the release of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning in the summer of 2023, Macquarie had mentioned that they had a good chunk of The Final Reckoning already shot. Yeah, we've filmed a chunk of it. We've shot Africa, we've shot the Arctic. There's an entire storyline of characters you're yet to meet and yet to hear about, which I'm very, very excited about. I would say probably, if I had to guess, probably 40% of the movie, maybe a little less. The very big action, the biggest and most complicated sequence is yet to come. Unfortunately for Macquarie, all of this would come to a grinding halt in July 2023 when the SAG-AFTRA strike took off.
They're showing no signs of slowing down, very loud, very passionate here, saying that they really want change and they're not going to stop until they get it.
After years of delays and production halts as a result of COVID, this had to be frustrating for the director, despite his solidarity with those protesting. It's unrelenting, he said. Behind each tsunami is another tsunami. We live in a state of 24-hour tsunami awareness. That's just what we do.
It was very, very challenging, taking away all of the logistics involved, and you've seen those two sequences that center in the movie that are as complicated as they are. We were doing that through a pandemic and two strikes and shooting parts of this movie while we were shooting the last movie, all out of sequence. You name a complication and this movie had it.
It would take nearly 8 months for them to get back into full production mode. And in March 2024, the film would return to production. However, soon after, they were about to face another setback. For this part of production, they were filming some submarine sequences that were crucial to the plot of the film. The submarine they were using, which is said to have alone cost $25 million, malfunctioned. Now, it's unclear if the submarine itself malfunctioned or the winch or the crane or whatever they used to lower it in and out of the water malfunctioned. Regardless, they would have to push back the production again for several weeks as they would repair it. All in all, these last 2 Mission Impossible films were almost more impossible to make than the missions they portrayed. What also is usual by now is that with every Mission Impossible entry, the stunts became ever more dangerous and anxiety-inducing, with the person most affected not being the guy that actually puts his life on the line, but rather the director behind the scenes. With every new sequence more bonkers than the next, McQuarrie believed that it just couldn't get worse, yet being proven wrong time and time again. After wrapping the movie, the director explained in an interview with Deadline how he finally felt some relief. You've heard us say it before with every mission. This is the most complicated thing we've ever done. This is the most dangerous thing we've ever done. It's the most ambitious thing we've ever done. It's always true. This is the first time when we did that twice in one movie. The submarine sequence represents something, and the aerial scene represents something that each, in their own way, is the most complicated, most difficult thing that we've done. Luckily, no one fell out of the plane, drowned, or had a broken ankle, with Tom Cruise this time around surviving the production of Final Reckoning without suffering any injuries. This was no fluke, mind you. Cruise has been doing his own stunts for 3 decades, having collaborated with various stunt teams and directors with each succeeding movie. More experience from past movies came with it, which was especially true for Christopher McQuarrie as well, as unlike any other director in the series, he got a fixed position from the 5th movie and on. The scariest sequence, which had the most potential for things to go wrong, was surely the biplane sequence, shot in the Blyde River Canyon of South Africa.
3, 2, 1.
This scene required Cruise to film multiple roles at the same time while also conducting vertigo-inducing stunts. Cruise was responsible for lighting the shot by positioning the plane adequately, and he also needed to pull focus by himself as no one else was there to do it for him.
Hey, sorry to bother you, Tom. Hey, McHugh! Chris McQuarrie! Hi, everybody. Hey, listen, I hate to interrupt, but we really gotta roll. We are losing the lights, low on fuel.
The sequence involved Cruise climbing onto the wing of the plane, which was done against expert advice at first. The practice of going out onto the wing of a flying airplane is called wing walking, and that is who Cruise went to first, some wing walkers. And they said, "What do you want to do?" And Tom said, "I want to be between the wings of the plane holding onto the tension wires, and I want to be in 0G between the wings." And the wing walkers who do this for a living said, "That will never happen. You can never do that." And Tom said, "All right, well, thank you very much for your time." And Christopher McQuarrie went on and found some other wing walkers.
I remember seeing them as a kid and really wanted to do that. And it was very, very demanding. Figuring it out, we start out these things and then we're in the middle of it. I'm like, okay, this is a bad idea. Where do I sign up?
It's really about the kind of sketchy conditions Tom would find himself in up in the air. There was no radio. Only hand signals could aid Tom in communicating with McQuarrie, who followed his plane closely.
Tom goes up and is operating the focus in his own shots while flying the plane while acting. He is a one-man aerial crew. I always have to remind him to stop looking like he's having fun.
Safety gear was minimal, to put it lightly. Aside from the wires keeping Cruise from falling off it entirely, he didn't have any special clothing to protect him, nor some kind of oxygen tank, which sufficiently supplied him with air, which could be a deadly combination up in the skies. As McQuarrie put it, when you leave the cockpit of the plane, it's like stepping onto the surface of another planet. The wind is hitting you in excess of 140 miles an hour coming off of the propeller. The molecules in the air are so dispersed you're breathing, but only physically. You're not actually getting any oxygen. And the first assistant director, Mary Boulder, is sitting next to me and she's got a stopwatch. And when Tom climbs out of the cockpit, I'll say, "Start the clock."
When it rained on days when I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness, like my body can recover a little bit. It was exhilarating. It was intense, which I like, enormously challenging, incredibly painful at times.
Yeah.
Cruise only had around 12 minutes up on the wing, as short bursts of time are as exhausting as a full-on workout in the gym. But being Tom Cruise, he would still push the boundaries by staying a minute longer in the air than is suggested, or by laying on the wing for an extended period of time, to the point where the crew wasn't sure if their lead star and producer just lost consciousness or not.
That amount of force of air, I can't breathe. So I had to figure out how you're taking the wind and you're breathing down here like this. And the air particles coming off that propeller are traveling at the speed of sound.
In the end, everything turned out just fine. No one got hurt, and the team were able to collect an abundance of footage when shooting the biplane sequence. Even so much that not every stunt made it into the final cut.
Tom would do a stunt in the morning that had topped anything he'd ever done in his career, and then he'd go out in the afternoon and dunk on that 2 more times. There are so many big stunts just in that sequence alone, we had to cut some out.
With the first sequence being one filmed up in the sky, the second outlier is a polar opposite, taking place deep underwater.
It's like a 20-minute underwater sequence.
Q and I are constantly talking about story, script, lenses. So we came up with an idea.
Tom wanted to do the wing walking sequence. I wanted to do the underwater sequence. And during the making of both, one of us would turn to the other and say, "This was your idea. Just remember, you wanted this."
You came up with the idea.
Having been on these films for 18 years, if I heard Tom was going to jump into the mouth of a cloned T-Rex, I'd probably go, yeah. It doesn't surprise me anymore.
This shoot was very different to the biplane sequence, as it was being filmed in a much more controlled environment. The danger may not have been just as sky high as the biplane shoot, but it came at the cost of significant preparation necessary. At the time of filming, the crew had to build the largest underwater stage in existence to film their submarine sequences in, which they were able to do quite well.
Welcome to the deep dive tank, the scene of the Hollywood megastar's latest death-defying stunt. When Tom wanted to film the submarine scenes, there just wasn't a tank big enough, so he's built one.
Crews would at times also be equipped with a waist-mounted camera that would record him from the front, with also constructing a revolving interior set that is flooded with water.
The light, a lot of times I cannot see because of the reflection of the light, so I would go in kind of blind. Plus the suit, when it's wet, increases in weight by about 125 pounds. So the kind of workouts and things that I have to think about just to prepare for these things, it's years of development.
McQuarrie would speak to this challenge, saying, "It was really physically punishing for Tom Cruise. He's in a rotating structure filled with debris, and you had to find a way to make that environment look as chaotic and unhinged as humanly possible, but in a way that you could repeat, and that Tom could navigate and survive." If that wasn't challenging enough, the suit's design also caused Cruise more breathing problems. "I'm breathing in my own carbon dioxide. It builds up in the body and affects the muscles. You have to overcome all of that while you're doing it and be present." One thing became clear yet again. This movie is ambitious as hell, something that yet again one-upped what McQuarrie previously believed was not toppable. And this underwater sequence has been billed as being even bigger and crazier than the movie The Abyss by James Cameron. So we're trying to leave some of the details out of this for those of you who have not seen the movie yet. But then again, what really is a Mission Impossible film without a helping hand of movie-making magic? What is definite is that a load of rig removal was conducted for this film. Every wire, every harness, every little speck of security had to be eliminated from the final image. Even the pilot in the biplane sequence had to wear a green screen suit so they could remove him, so it just looked like Tom Cruise was on the plane by himself. What Dead Reckoning taught us too is that there very likely will be extensive CG set extensions and effects which are not going to be immediately obvious. And the trailer itself even shows some hints of CG trickery, from gargantuan explosions to underwater submarines and to even more innocuous effects such as the bright blue graphic on top of some high-tech masks. IMDb credits 15 visual effects studios which have contributed in some way to the production of Mission Impossible, with specializations of some giving us hints as to what was likely needed for the film. Clear Angle Studios, as an example, specializes in 3D scanning using LiDAR technology, from aerial scans to digital doubles of actors and even facial performance captures. All things that have in some way been utilized for prior movies in the franchise, especially environment scans to be used for digital reconstructions in post. Other studios don't even need an introduction, such as ILM, who have been visual effects pioneers. Yet another studio in this list of 15 VFX houses is a legend that unceremoniously went through an expected but sudden death. NPC, a VFX house responsible for the stunning visuals of Life of Pi, various Ridley Scott movies we have covered on this channel such as Alien Covenant and Prometheus, and for the effects of countless other movies, were forced to suddenly close its doors due to the grave financial situation of its parent, Technicolor, which have been struggling for years at this point. However, what could this have meant for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, to have this all going on at the same time? While things are still a bit murky as to what portion of MPC really worked on Dead Reckoning, MPC has been bought by the AI firm TransPerfect in late March, which seems to have kept the French branch of MPC somewhat operational for now. It is likely that the artists were able to see this production to the end, even if the circumstances have been less than pleasant. It's pretty disheartening to see that while many artists are losing their jobs, a lot of the marketing around Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning seems to follow the path of many Hollywood marketing strategies nowadays. Try and pump up the practical effects elements of the film while either not mentioning or downplaying the role digital VFX plays. And throughout a series of films that have featured some amazing practical stunts and effects, the digital visual effects artists have been right alongside them to help augment those groundbreaking stunts. So props to all the VFX artists that have worked on all the Mission Impossible films. And with that, The Final Reckoning would wrap up its production and head off to theaters, perhaps ending a nearly 30-year run as a franchise. And while reviews are mixed on this film, which is hardly surprising as ending a franchise always leads to mixed results, Mission Impossible stand as a significant series in the history of cinema. Maybe, perhaps not one of the greatest stories ever told, but more for what it did to stretch the imagination and creativity of what is possible when it comes to filmmaking. Love him, hate him, think he's a diva. It doesn't matter. Tom Cruise pushed the boundaries of what was possible with insane stunts for over 30 years. The scope of the work he has accomplished in the series is something we likely won't ever see again. So we should all give a little toast to this insane franchise, the mad actor, and directors who made it all possible. We appreciate everyone who watched the entire series and supports this channel. If you liked this entire series, please be sure to subscribe so you can see our future episodes and series that we have coming out in the future, and tell us what your favorite Mission Impossible film is, or go back and watch the entire series right here.